Hi everybody, I'm just gonna do a really quick video, a piping video. Nothing special or anything. I just wanted to do kind of like a casual kind of smoke, but also talk about the passing of Steve Albini. I just found out this morning that he passed away at 61 from a heart attack, which is really sad and tragic. I was mostly just like reflecting on, his contribution to music and his contribution to culture, really. He's touched practically some of the best records, was an incredible producer, mixer. Definitely some of my favorite records of all time have been produced by Steve Albini. So, I've been listening to his bands, specifically Big Black and Shellac, and also just listening to a lot of the records that he produced. Some of my favorite being PG Harvey's Rid of Me, The Jesus Lizard, Goat. Basically all the records that he produced from Pixies. Specifically Surfa Rosa, The Breeders he's produced. I mean, he's done a lot. I mean, he's produced, and or worked on hundreds and hundreds of records. So super prolific career, just an all-around cool dude. Love his interviews, specifically his Nardwuar interview, which I'm going to include some of my favorite moments right here.
That's a deep cut, as they would say, as some people would say. I wouldn't normally say that, but I feel like it's kind of appropriate.
I'm a prick.
Okay.
Lemmings. Millions of dead
Cops.
cops.
Yeah.
You weren't too much a fan of that band.
No, they were awful. They were stupid and bad.
Like, who was good? What's the opposite of stupid and bad?
I don't. Do you want me to name a band that I like?
Yeah. What's the opposite of MDC?
I've never really thought about it in those terms, but
Don't like MDC too much.
only because they're bad.
But they're still in the game. They're still in the game. You got to give them that, right?
I'm constitutionally unable to decline something that Kim Deal asks me to do. I'm putty in her hands. They have a truly magnificent collection of microphones, and I coveted that entire mic closet deeply. I can do an impression of George Martin if you'd like.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to be George Martin, right? What I'd like you to do is say, "Excuse me," and get my attention, and then I'll do my impression of George Martin. Okay, of Sir George Martin.
As long as it doesn't involve a punch to the head.
You have nothing to fear. So I'm going to look this way, and then you get my attention.
Excuse me, George Martin.
Hello, I'm George Martin. That's it. That's my impression of George Martin.
Baboom. About Jarrito sodas.
I believe it's pronounced Jarritos, and they're
Thank you.
yeah, they're very colorful, sort of nondescript, fruitish flavored soda pop sold in Mexican groceries in Chicago, and they're brightly colored and so they add a little spark of gaiety to the kitchen.
Poker enthusiast, coffee enthusiast, cat enthusiast, microphone enthusiast. His fixation is on microphones and mixing equipment. It's always really fun to hear him in interviews talk about his kind of setup and everything, even though I'm not too familiar with the technical aspects that goes behind the making of music. But to hear someone like him talk about music and kind of his process has been really illuminating and fascinating to me. Of course, everyone knows that, he produced In Utero by Nirvana. But that's the one that everybody knows about. But all the for me, I'm more interested in the other bands that he's worked on. I find those records better, but these are just, I mean, this is just like my opinion. You don't have to agree. Really kind of sad about his passing, really. I mean, that's quite the loss. I mean, he's had such an influence, whether people are aware of it or not. Super influential, just super, super influential. Today, I'm going to be smoking actually a mix. It's a mix of nutty Irishman, Yale mix, and black hazelnut. Incredible mix. Been smoking this a lot. I already have my bowl packed. And it's just the usual pipe that I always use. This is kind of my go-to. And I also have a glass of Frangelico on ice. This combination is incredible. Highly recommend it. Those not familiar with Frangelico, it's like a hazelnut liqueur, definitely like a desserty type of drink, you know, something that you will have after a dinner or something. A nice way to end the night, you know? Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and light up my pipe. Trying to get it lit up a bit. She's lit. She's going. Dang, it smells incredible. Yeah, I recommend this mix. If you guys have nutty Irishman and Yale mix, and if you have like some sort of sweetie kind of throwaway tobacco, you can kind of mix it together and it'll create something really pleasant. Anyway, back to what I was saying earlier about Steve Albini. It just really makes you reflect that a lot of that generation of musicians, he would have been what, Gen X? You know, which is, in my opinion, just speaking for myself, my favorite musicians are Gen Xers, some even boomers, you know. Eventually, they're gonna all pass away, which really kind of sucks, you know, because it's like, who's gonna replace? I mean, they're just kind of irreplaceable. I feel like music now is just kind of like at a standstill. Nothing really, and I'm not just saying, I mean, people can kind of interpret this as kind of boomery, but like, and it's not the fault of anyone really. It's just that like everything's kind of already been done. We've kind of peaked. You can't really do anything like transgressive anymore, you know? If anything, nowadays people are just kind of nostalgia baiting. People are just kind of doing music that's like evocative of the past, you know, especially like the 80s, 70s, but nothing like really fresh or new. And of course, like you can create something that does touch on things from the past and make it interesting, sonically interesting, but nothing is like really, like I said, transgressive or just breaking the mold or just creating something that's like new and innovative. And you can't, because like I said, everything's kind of already been done. There's just like nowhere to go. Now we've got like AI and stuff, like everything is just kind of still, but circling back to what I was saying earlier, there isn't going to be like another Steve Albini. No one's going to replace him, you know? This is a really good mix. But yeah, no one's gonna replace Steve Albini. How did I find out about him? I actually knew just because he's like so influential. I wasn't aware of like his own projects. I, like everyone else in the world, was made aware of him through Nirvana in utero when I was like, my brothers would listen to Nirvana and I would hear them play Nevermind and In Utero from the other room. That was like my first introduction to his music, whether I was aware of it or not. It wasn't until high school when I was really kind of forming my own taste and really coming into my own, early high school years. So this would have been like 2009. Around there is kind of how I found out about specifically Big Black. I was really into post-punk music at the time. It's kind of like my height of, and that lasted all the way until my early college years. I was just stuck in that, you know, shoegaze and post-punk was kind of like the stuff that I was like really stuck on for a really, really long time. Of course, actually there was three, shoegaze, post-punk, and post-hardcore. Post-hardcore came prior to everything else. That was like middle school for me, but that's something else. With like post-punk, I was kind of exploring other subgenres within that umbrella, like, you know, noise and noise rock, noise punk, and that's how I found out about Big Black. I was introduced to Atomizer, specifically the track Passing Complexion, which is still like to this day my favorite Big Black song of all time, easily. The most incredible riff that's just so satisfying and delicious. It's like so good. There's such great energy in that song and that whole record, really. So that was kind of like when I really got into them, and then I delved into like other stuff during that time, and then I kind of rediscovered them like when I was like 19 or 20. So that was kind of like my true introduction to Big Black. And of course, during this same time, I was learning more about Steve Albini, and like I was getting into a lot of like 90s, like PJ Harvey and etc. And, you know, Slint, math rock, post rock. He produced Tweez, I believe. He did not produce Spiderland, but he did have his hand on that band. I mean, talk about a career. I mean, like, that is like such a career. That is like so, and of course, like, also, I completely forgot, but like Pixies, you know, I was so into Pixies in high school, even before I even found out about Big Black. Surfa Rosa, like, I mean, like, that's, I mean, when I think about that album in particular, I think about that kind of like, you know, just that iconic guitar tone, that iconic drum, like just the heaviness of it all, you know. And when I really think about it, all the things that he's kind of like touched on, they all share this kind of heaviness, especially within like the percussion. And I mean, even like PJ Harvey's Rid of Me, I mean, that's like, I don't know, like super percussive and feral and like boom, boom, strong and powerful. And it actually, I didn't know this until like maybe like 5 years ago, but I found out that he even produced Chevelle's Point Number One album, which is like so funny to me, because like when I think of like Chevelle, I think of like I don't know, what do I think of when I think of Chevelle? Kind of like that, they're not new metal, but they're like kind of like that 90s kind of alternative rock boom that was happening at the time. And like Chevelle was like really popular at the time, especially like in the early 2000s. I just could not escape like a Chevelle song like in 2003 or whatever. Like I just remember like my brothers would play them constantly, and specifically the Point Number One, and like what's the other album, the one like The Red is on, whatever that album is. I just could not escape that. And that was like, even again, like at the time I was a kid, like a literal child, and like I just had no clue like that Steve Albini had a role in producing Chevelle's a Chevelle record, which is like, I think is their first one. So again, like, it's just, he's just so iconic, you know? It went out. Yeah, super prolific dude. He wrote for many, you know, iconic music publications at the time, in the 80s and 90s, especially the 80s. And I also just really appreciate his kind of work ethic. He's really kind of been a champion for like musicians and artists, and really fights for their right for, I mean, like, he has been on record saying that, like, I don't want to accept, you know, royalties in the way that just, like, it's really exploitative. I mean, he's just, like, a cool dude that just, I mean, he's not wrong. Also, his other projects are super great. Shellac is an incredible band. A little bit different from Big Black and Rapeman, but still great. Also, I forgot to mention this, but Big Black includes members of Naked Raygun, which is another really good punk band that I really like a lot. He still had his studio in Chicago, and it's so cool that, like, he just remained in Chicago for decades and just, like, never left, you know? Still doing his thing all the way to the very end. And of course, he's just so deadpan and funny. I love his interviews. He's just, like, authentically himself, and it really comes through. People can interpret it as him being pretentious or like an asshole or whatever, but, like, I mean, the guy is true to himself, and you have to acknowledge that and admire that, really. There's no phoniness with him. But yeah, I mean, terrible loss. Terrible, terrible loss. Whether people are aware of it or not, he's super influential and has influenced ton of bands, and then, you know, for the decades to come as well, whether they're aware of it or not. He'll definitely be missed. Again, sucks that he passed away by a heart attack. Rest in peace. Rest in peace. I'm gonna be listening to his music all day, be watching some interviews, watching some live performances on YouTube, looking at old archived photos. Big dude, you know? Big loss, big music. You know, he had a big heart in his own little way, specific way. Big heart for music. I mean, the dude loves music. The guy is a freaking encyclopedia of knowledge of music, really. I mean, if you watch or listen to any of his, or read any of his interviews, I mean, he's always dropping really good bands that I will later look up and listen to. One more sip of this. Dang, that's good. Light her up a tad bit more. Ooh. Anyway, I do plan to post more piping videos. You guys seem to really be into them for some reason. I've been piping a lot more. Steve Albini. Pipe. Drink. That's the vibe for today. Rest in peace, Steve Albini. You're surely missed. Great music. Fans are mourning. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned. Also, for those that, like, follow my video diary, I have not updated that in probably like 6 months. I'm going to be spamming those videos, and I'm sorry that's annoying, but I need to be up to date. I'm trying to be better about posting those. It's a fun project that I've been working on, and it's just like a little snippet of certain parts of my life, and I do enjoy, you know, making them, and it's fun. Some of you guys get a kick out of it, so. But anyway, yeah, just thanks for watching. Highly recommend. Great mix. No bite, smooth, smells good, sweet, goes great with a nice sweet drink. Frangelico, Di Serono. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and you guys have a great rest of your week, or night, day, wherever you're at, and stay tuned for more.